Hey Tom, how are you?
Hi. Hi, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Um, I consider myself to be, I don't know, I don't know if it's because I am also short and blonde that I thought that, I don't know, I've always felt, and also because I feel like that I'm older than I always feel older than I am. I have felt like an odd kinship to Truman Capote just because he's so acid-tongued, so clever. Not saying that I'm like that, but very aspirational. But I feel like
Yes.
this show really knocked the wind out of me in terms of where it goes and the level of true loneliness that you portray and difficulty. Like, dear God, I knew I was going to like the show, but holy shit, where the show goes, I was not expecting. So that's a long way of saying that I love the show and I love your performance and thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
No,
Um,
no. Thank you. That's very eloquent because I think that is uh that I think it has touched people like that. And also that's a special thing because it seemed so glamorous. It seemed like such a
mhm,
glamorous take on the world. And I thought, well, I can see it's going to be glamorous. I can see it's going to be this amazing deep dive into the world of the Swans and the Upper East Side and Capote as a sort of tour guide into that
mhm,
world. But the fact that people have seen the loneliness and uh, the alienation and the how hard it was, the rawness of being him uh,
yeah,
in that time, and how he had to fight for his life the whole time. Um, I, that has that's a wonderful thing because
mhm,
it could have been that it was so glamorous that you that would sort of get between you and emotion, the viewer,
right,
and which has not happened. And they
yeah,
somehow with they've had their cake and eaten it in that sense. I mean, the creators,
yeah,
Ryan and Robbie and Gus. So and hearing you, because the other thing is that I've learnt over the being in playing, trying to do acting for 30 years that it's the the aspiration as an actor is to play characters that are relatable and
mhm,
um and relatable doesn't necessarily mean uh average or ordinary.
mhm,
Danger with someone who is exceptional and unusual is that they're not relatable, that they're too peculiar to be for a large amount of people watching it to go, oh yeah, I feel like that. That's how I felt. But
yeah,
somehow the writing of this has allowed Truman to be relatable. And not many people have lived like Truman. Um, so that's also a wonderful thing. Um, I'm
yeah,
very
yeah.
glad. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, there was just like something, just talking about circumstances. Like, I think that sometimes we take for granted, I mean, especially just for queer people, like what the show goes through late 60s, late 70s. And I think sometimes audiences, especially the overly critical homosexuals, my fellow homosexuals, we sometimes are like, we forget or take for granted that something about the way that he had a partner in Jack, whether they took advantage of that relationship to each other is one thing, and then like I remember someone saying when I was describing the show about how maybe Truman would take on like a lover. And he was like, how could he do that? And I was like, how can you not do that being a gay man at that time period? And if that opportunity presented himself, he's going to take it as much as he possibly can of that opportunity. I don't know. Um, that wasn't really a question. That was just a random comment. Um,
But I mean, the relationship with Jack is amazing, isn't it?
no, yeah.
And Joe Mantello is so good because he manages to make Jack not just walked all over. He
Hmm.
gives some steel. Uh, it would be very easy for Jack to become a sort of long-suffering sad sack who is just putting up with this extreme behavior from his
Right.
dysfunctional acting out, um, addict partner, which is a the codependent, the long-suffering codependent. He
Mhm.
managed to not play that, and he plays someone with real, he's a kind of bruiser.
Yeah.
Um, that was that was a great achievement. He's super
That
smart.
relationship between that was one of the most fascinating parts of the show to me. The way that that relationship evolved and changed, and the way that, like, the scene where he comes into the house and he discovers you and Russell just standing there, the way that the camera follows him, and then I was just like, oh, I don't know where this is going to go, and I don't know how this is going to change their relationship. And then it was just like, I don't know, something about the ending, especially when, um, after Truman passes, and he comes back. Of course, I don't know. This is a show really that I keep realizing that it is about great loves that we have with each other, whether they seem ordinary. So, the great loves with the Swans, the great loves with Babe, the great loves, whether the relationship works or not. That to me, it felt like a great love between him and Jack in terms of friendship, respect, and lovers. I don't know.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
um,
One
I
of
did.
the Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was gonna ask something about eavesdropping because Truman brings up eavesdropping. He talks about it a lot, actually, more than I was surprised. Like, he talks about it with John O'Shea's daughter.
Yeah.
He comments about it when people, ask about his process, stuff like that. And
Yes.
I kept thinking about that as Truman is eavesdropping for his writing, and then I guess eavesdropping for Tom as an actor. And I guess I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how not relatable that is as a performer, but I feel like that would be something that an actor could really tap into. That I thought, with this great historical figure and becoming him.
Well, that it makes me think of two. There are two ways to answer that.
Hmm.
I mean, it just sets off two thought trains.
Okay.
Um, well, one is the people watching. I think has always been a useful, a legitimate waste of time for actors, as in sitting and watching the world go by, seeing the way that people. So that's a form of eavesdropping, which I think is you can't get enough of.
Yeah.
And the more you see, if you can remember it, then it helps you. It helps you in your acting. And it also does occur to me as you asked the question that his first and most famous, the first famous novel is Other Voices, Other Rooms, isn't it? Which in a way
Hmm.
is a description of eavesdropping. So it just occurred to me now that that's what that title means in a
Hmm.
way. It's one way of reading that title. It's that, isn't it? What's happening through the door? I'm in a hotel at the moment, and it's one of those hotels with a door into the next room.
Oh yeah.
Should you be sufficiently grand to book both rooms? And I opened it to see if to see, just just natural curiosity to see if it
Sure.
was. And they've got a big bit of foam between the two doors, so obviously put there to stop people hearing what's going on in the next room. I'd show it to you if I wasn't worried about my battery on my. But uh, and the other thing is but you're actually asking specifically about the process of trying to be Truman. So and I mean, I don't know if that was if that's eavesdropping or it's really uh initially it's just trying to do a sort of start off with some crude impression of him. Um and then and so you have to just kind of try and pretend to be someone else. So I don't know if that's just like you're diving into something.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like eavesdropping. It's I suppose, did you eavesdrop on his feelings? Did you eavesdrop on, I suppose, in a way? I suppose if you're playing a historical figure who's known and who's there's lots of material on, I suppose that is a form of eavesdropping. It's a form of um but it's copying, really. I would
Mhm.
trying to copy, and then but you can't just do a facsimile. You can't just do an impression. Not that I can anyway. Uh, it's a thing you have to learn as an actor. Is what's the difference between being an impressionist and being an actor? And there's always a sort of assumption that somehow acting is superior to doing an impression. That's what you're taught anyway when you're training, which I'm not sure of, because when you see a brilliant impression, it's incredible, isn't it? But I think the what you learn, that the truism is that somehow an impression is not a living thing. An impression
Mhm.
is kind of dead, whereas a performance is alive. And I think a really brilliant impression is all of those things. But you in doing this, I knew that I had to give myself permission to not always be doing an impression of Truman, and or not always attempting an impression of him, but to um, try and make him me a bit, to try and breathe emotion that I was feeling. Um, and then in that way, you have to identify closely, and then you have to make the character you. Um, if you're to express anything human, I think
Mhm. Yeah.
that's it's something in that area, and I seem to have got away with it. Uh, in this case, haven't always got away with it, so it's I'm very grateful, and I'm not entirely sure why it's worked. And then there's not there's nothing to be gained from diving too deeply into why it's worked. I don't think. I'm just kind of going, well, thank whatever power was at work, and also maybe the casting process. That power. It's not a supernatural power; it's a rational power. Um, but in which somebody goes, "That's the right actor to play that part." So, and when
Yeah.
they maybe see instinctively that there are some points of identification between that actor and that character, like when you're looking at the back of your television set to see which cable fits and which holes and
Yeah.
spikes. The casting director goes, that SCART cable probably will fit mostly,
Yeah.
and the bits that don't fit we can cut out.
Yeah,
um,
like, I mean, there's something about, I mean, I'm sure everybody's talking about physicality, so I didn't want to ask about that, but there's something that I wanted to say to you that I love is when you are alone or you are by yourself, like sitting at the typewriter. Or I think probably the moment that hit the hardest emotionally for me is after you read the eulogy. Not necessarily even
Oh yeah.
reading the eulogy, but there's a very brief second where the camera stays on you after Chloe Sevigny walks out the door, and like we hear the door close, and the camera stays on you for like 3 seconds,
Uh-huh.
and it is sort of like that is not the Truman Capote that we are used to seeing. That is like the most adrift that we have ever seen him. And that a moment like that, and a moment where you're sitting at your typewriter typing something out, that still feels very authentically Truman Capote. So I mean, there's something about it that was so alluring to me. I can't really articulate what it is necessarily, but it was sort of freaky to me that when I was watching that, that I was just like, I'm watching I'm watching a real person. It was really strange. Um,
That's I mean, those moments. That sounds like that's a that's a great bit of. That does also sound like very good editing and directing, because there are these moments, and not to I don't want to take away from the implied my implied greatness there from what you've just said. There is also this moment where the end of a take where it is very raw,
yeah.
and not every director or editor has this has that's often a very interesting moment, uh where the actor has nothing, there's no more dialogue, so they're just left with the feelings
Hmm.
or at work in the scene, and they're still swirling around you, like like when you're in a like when you've been working out or something and you stop working out, and
Oh yeah.
for a few minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, you still have the feelings swirling around you. And like post anything, post food, post sex, post the acting, there's
Hmm.
this moment of uh but I also do remember the I certainly remember the eulogy scene, because that was um that was so beautiful, what Robbie had written, his eulogy for Babe, that he
Hmm.
wasn't able to read out. Um, and he was being rejected even then. Uh, that was so cruel of them.
Yeah. That
And
was
I
yeah.
do, I do remember that. I do just actually just remember thinking this is. I just remember being consumed by the feeling of that. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So I and how beautifully he'd written it. He and that because he wrote every so often he'd write. Robbie would write. Obviously, he was writing screenplays in which is there's the principle with screenplays is show don't tell, that make people do things to reveal their character. It's their actions that reveal their character, not what they say. It's their behavior. But in this, he also had the job of writing a great writer, which
Hmm.
might intimidate people. Might if you had to, you've got to write Truman Capote, and you've got to write stuff that Truman Capote might have written. That's quite a big ask.
Yeah.
Um,
I would faint.
and that there were moments where you'd go, I believe that's Truman. I utterly believe that's Truman Capote. So it's Robbie that's every so often it was just these two people. Robbie is Truman. Robbie's become Truman in the writing of this.
Hmm.
Uh, so I can surf on that. Um,
Yeah, I actually had wondered. I was like going crazy trying to find any. I was like, is that a real eulogy that was like published
yes,
somewhere? I was
yeah.
like scouring like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was
There
like,
you
Truman
go. Well,
Capote.
Right.
It's
I didn't
insane.
do that, but I mean, maybe it was. Maybe he did find something and pastiched it, but or nicked it. Maybe he did, and if he did, I don't think that makes it any less of an achievement. But it was
Yeah.
to have. I think. I mean, I know for sure there were. I used to say, "Is this you or is this him?" Very often it was him. Very often it
Crazy.
was you. It was Robbie. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Um, well, I think I need to let you go, but I do want to tell you that I'm just so this is sort of just me gushing like I did at the top. I've never seen something that um really chews on like that whole subject of misogyny, potential misogyny between straight women and gay men. I think that is
Yeah.
really fascinating.
Yes.
Any single moment that you had with Jessica Lange, who I did not even know that was part of the show, like
Oh,
who would not want Jessica Lange to play their mother?
I know.
But like there's something about the way that like your eyes avoid her gaze, especially towards the beginning, that I felt like is a great moment of the writing and the performance really again informing the interior life of somebody that we think that we know. And there that final episode where you are pitching ideas to her, there's such a really cool energy between the two of you, and it was just like I could not believe those scenes. Those are so amazing.
I, I couldn't believe I was acting. I mean, that I was with that Jessica Lang.
Yeah.
She was Jessica
Yeah, just kind of like that high pitched laugh, like, ah, I could die with that.
Lang. But she was so cruel. She was such a bitch. And she loved it. She loved doing it. It was, um, and that relationship was so complicated and tortured and
Yeah,
also and that they had got so much traction out of it inspirationally. Robbie and Ryan, to use his mother, the mother relationship with Truman was, he had such a bad start in life, being abandoned by her,
mm,
uh age 4, whatever he was. um and then the rest of his life trying to get her approval, always trying to get her approval, getting her approval, and her, the way that they melded that into provoking him to drink, her saying, "Drink, you're so much better when you drink.
yeah,
Shit when you don't drink." That as an imaginative uh conceit for to explain an addictive attachment to alcohol is just brilliant. So much more interesting than going, oh, that the shot that we've all seen 100 times in things of a guy at a bar going, oh, I know I shouldn't, but can I have a
yeah.
bourbon? That her have the person in his head going, you're shit when you don't drink.
And
Which, by the way,
gently putting it into his hand, like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah. And then she'd improvise. She improvised one of those scenes. I'm afraid I can't remember. And maybe it was the last episode where I was at a typewriter and she was looking out of the window and she said, "Oh, the night, all the best things happen at night." Something that I'm
mhm,
paraphrasing, which she pretty much made up. It was suddenly we were in some sort of Tennessee Williams play, and we were standing on a veranda, and you could virtually see the curtains were not curtains, but they were Spanish moss, whatever that stuff that hangs down.
yeah.
It was like that. She was amazing, and she didn't do any publicity as far as I know for it, and then she's this kind of amazing surprise in the show.
Yeah, the Truman and Nina Capote are like that's like the lost Tennessee Williams play of my dreams,
Right.
and you guys got to do a little preview for it. So yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for your time. I'm a big fan. I'm a huge Night Manager fan still, years later.
thanks.
Um, so thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you guys this season. I'm really, really excited for more people to check it out. So thank you.
Thanks for everything you said about it.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course. All right.
Thanks.
Have a good rest of your day.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye.